Hello, everyone. Today is September 15th. This is the bi-weekly release engineering subproject meeting for SIG Release. This is a meeting that is recorded and available on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, and in general, just be awesome people. So we've got a few agenda items, some that have fallen out of the 119 retro, but I want to start off with some congratulations and some welcoming of new team members. So as of yesterday, we've promoted Marco to a fully fledged, all the power release manager. So congrats, Marco. Thank you for all the work that you've been doing. It's been pretty awesome to see your the increased responsibility that you've taken on over the past few cycles. So thank you. And
thank you as well. This news really made my day and all that, and I just want to thank you everyone for the support and for everything.
Awesome. So second up, we have added some new release manager associates. These were some people who were interested in the release manager associate role last cycle, and they also happened to be leading their respective roles on the 119 release team. So without further ado, welcome Adolfo, Max, and Gianluca to the team.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here.
Thank you for the chance to joining you and doing some awesome work.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Good team. So we have done, I've done some of the initial onboarding for you all. As of yesterday, you should have access to the release managers at Kubernetes.io group, as well as the Kate's infra release viewers group, which will allow you to view logs for the various build runs that we do for Kubernetes, the staging and release runs. For Marco, you have been added to those groups in addition to the release manager's private group. You've been given release manager access on GitHub Teams, which means you have write access over Kubernetes now. So great power, great responsibility, all of that good stuff. You should also be added to the private Slack groups. So I'll be wrapping up the onboarding stuff throughout the week. There are just a few more pieces, but I wanted to make sure that y'all at least have the communication groups set up. So more to come. If you have questions, please ask. We are open books. We try to be as transparent as possible. So any questions as you're getting ready to onboard, especially Marco will talk more about the role definition later in the meeting. So stay tuned for that. Any questions?
There will be some in the future, I'm sure.
Awesome. Okay, next up, now that we have new personnel, we need to talk about personnel for the upcoming releases. So I believe, Tim, you started the chat in the private group. So I want to confirm who will be doing the patch releases for tomorrow, first off.
I can do, but I don't know if Sasha wants to do. And if Marco have time tomorrow morning, maybe we can make a session and then I can do some knowledge transfer.
That sounds good to me. I have morning free, so I should be able to do so.
Good.
Okay, so Carlos, I'll leave it to you to coordinate with Marco and Sasha and any of the release manager associates that want to look over your shoulder while you're doing those?
Sure.
All right. Now, the next one up is 120 Alpha 1. So 120 Alpha 1 is kind of the release that we cut right before the release cycle has officially started, which the release cycle has officially started. So we should cut that soon. Is there anyone interested in taking that one?
I'm happy to run releases whenever needed, but also will defer to others to get the experience as well.
I have a question. Should we maybe leave that to associates, because we had some history of doing that before, and that might be good opportunity if someone wants to pair and see if we can come up with something.
So this one I'd prefer to be done by manager, and the ones throughout the cycle we can delegate to associates.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what's unique about this one?
Yes. So this one is essentially the wrap up from the previous cycle. If you're familiar with the kind of the way we dance with the multiple releases throughout the cycle, depending on which release it is, there may be multiple releases cut. Depending on what type of release it is, there may be multiple releases cut, right? So for an alpha, there's only one release cut, and that's that alpha. For betas, previously we cut 2 releases, but right now we're only cutting 1 release because the betas are now running on the main branch. So alphas are single releases, betas are single releases, RCs even are single releases as of the branch cut, and finally the official releases are both official as well as RCs, right? So we'll cut the, so if you're cutting, 120.0, 120.0 will be the first release to cut, and the second one will be the 120.1-RC0, right? So it basically stages the next one in line. The reason this one is a little special, and for the Alpha 1 at least, is that it's kind of the wrap up from the previous cycle. So all of the, when we cut the 120 Alpha 0, for the 120 Alpha 0 essentially happens when we do the RC cut, or the branch creation, for the previous cycle. So that means that the last time we've cut a release on the primary branch was the time that we cut the RC for 119. So there are some catch-up commits. There may be weird things. I doubt there are going to be weird things, but I also prefer for that wrap-up to be handled by a more experienced release manager. So. Carlos, did you have something?
Sorry, I was not paying attention. I was fixing a problem in the company.
All good, all good. Okay, so it sounds like, Dan, you are on board for that? Okay, all right. And all right, so we've got Dan handling that, patch releases, Carlos and crew. And finally, the 120 release team liaison. Now, we had discussed initially in the channel that, so Carlos was kind of the liaison for 119, essentially the requirement being that you attend the release meetings, you provide status to the release team regarding branch management issues or duties, and so we were going to have Carlos continue for 120, but now that we have Marco stepping into the release manager role, I'd like Marco to also be the liaison for 120. And I think that'll give an opportunity for kind of lots of active releases under your belt as you go through the cycle, as well as lots of opportunities for mentorship from the senior release managers.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Thank you.
Hey, go team! I'm excited. Okay, so any questions on all of that stuff? All right. So next up on the list is Adolfo. Wanted to talk about the major themes in comms embargo. Was this meant to be maybe a SIG release meeting discussion?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe we can postpone that because it's mostly procedure.
Okay. Do you want to pull that off and pop that onto the other agenda? Cool. Awesome. So the next one up is also yours, Adolfo.
Yeah, this is regarding a PR I sent on Saturday, I think, regarding the promotion of images. I don't know if that's this is the right time to ask about that.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to? I was talking with Sasha, I think, a little bit about this. Do you want to maybe share your screen and walk us through it?
Yeah, sure. I wasn't ready for that, but of course. Okay, can I? Okay, and as soon as I can, I'm ready to.
Okay, you should have access now.
Okay, can you see the, because I got a lot of browser windows open. This is a promote subcommand pull request.
Yeah.
So basically what this does is that it takes a tag. It adds a new subcommand to Krell, which adds a tag to it. It takes a tag, a release tag. Then it takes your GitHub fork, and it will run in the background the zipmm. I don't know how to pronounce it. zipmm tool to analyze all the images in the repo, and it will push pull requests to promote those images. And I think I may have a, well, let me show you a little bit of the code. What this does is I'm reusing all of the libraries that we built to create pull requests and push things back to GitHub for the release notes. And it will these are promoted to Kates.io, right? I don't think I have an example of the output. There was an issue that I saw that Carlos had whenever he was promoting images, where the image manifest included the mock images, and I got stuck in that, and I wanted to ask about those. Since there are images that are tagged with from the mock run in the registry, those are included as well. So I was wondering what to do with those. Or do you want me to actually run the command? Because don't have it.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I don't have it in this computer.
It's okay. It's okay. Do you want me to share my screen for a bit?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Cool. Right. Let's. Anything embarrassing? Close a few windows. All right. So let me know if you can't see my screen. And I'll make the font bigger in a little bit. So generally when we walk through a image promotion during the release cycle, you'll have to do the image promotion from the kates.io repo that stores a bunch of the Kates infra tools. And I'll just try to give you an example of what this looks like without the new tool. So all right, so this one that I'm going to is the container image promoter repo. Container image promoter is the tool that we use across the community to do image promotions from the Kates community staging repos into the production area. So there's a tool within the repo called CIPMM, and eventually release managers, release engineering subproject, I would like us to clean up some of the things in this repo, maybe make that tool a little clearer about what it does. CIPMM stands for Container Image Promoter Merge Manifest, right? So the idea that I had, that I was like, it'd be really cool if we could do this, and Linus was like, I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna write a tool for it. So the idea was I wanted it to be kind of really simple for a release manager that was handling, or really anyone who is handling the manifests that are within the kates.io repo. So just to give you an example of what that looks like, we have images.yaml, right? So this manifest contains a set of container image digests, right, mapped to a tag, right? So the image promoter is going to read through this digest, the set of digests, as well as the image names, and determine what those images should be tagged as when they get promoted into production, right? And there are a bunch of validation things that happen in the background that I am not all familiar with, but this is an example of the build image set. So Debian base images, you can see the Debian Hypercube base images, as well as IP tables, Go Runner, and kubectl, right? So those are primarily the base images that we use, right? So it'd be cool if we could take, you know, normally if I was to think of an image that I wanted to get some information on, that was in a staging repo, I might do something like this, right? So gcr.io, let's say we're looking for build image, and I wanted to get info on like Debian base, right? And let's say buster-v1120, right? Let's try that. Okay, right. So it's going to spit out a digest for me, right? Which is the, this is going to be the manifest list for the image, which is going to contain a set of manifests for the individual image architectures, right? It also spits out the repo tags, right? So I know all of the tags that are attached to images with this name, right? And then if I was to do a raw with Scopio, it's going to give me the image manifest list, right? So if you're promoting multiple, if you're promoting a multi-arch image, you're going to need information on one, the manifest list digest, right? So you can see the manifest list digest for this tag is here, right? EA6. Those are different because this has been pushed recently. And then you'll also see we'll have to put entries in for each of the digests for the individual architectures, right? So AMD 64, ARM 64, PPC 64LE, and then S390X, right? This is error prone. I can say that as someone who has made errors with this before. So the CIPMM tool is meant to take a tag that you might be thinking about and look it up. Look it up either by the image name or the tags that you specify, and then take those manifests, take those digests, and add them to an existing manifest for the image promoter, right? So this kind of simplifies the process, right? If I was to run this in, oh, I don't have the command at the ready, unfortunately. But if I was to, so I wrote a janky bash script which does that essentially, and that's promote base images, right? So CIPMM base directory, right? So specifying where that's going to be, the staging repo, the filter image, so the image to filter on, and then the filter tag, right? So if I was to run this script from this directory, I'd get, say I wanted Debian base, and I didn't want to give it, so if I said Debian base and then Buster -v120, anything else? No. Okay, right. So this is kind of what the run looks like of CIPMM, right? It's scrolling through a set of parameters, right? The image names as well as the tags, and it's looking through these various manifests, and eventually it will spit out something. In this case, it's not going to, or it does. Okay, that's interesting. These, okay, these are because, so in our staging repo, we essentially push, whenever we merge changes into a certain repo, we push a tag. So you're also supposed to bump the tag if you're making any reasonable or any meaningful changes. So this is some probably out of band change that doesn't affect the image that has changed the digests, right? So, but being that we don't have anything to promote, these manifests are irrelevant, but this is just kind of an example of what it would look like, right? So normally you have to do this by hand. CIPMM takes the manualness, some of the manualness out of the process, and then Krell promote kind of extends this further. So if we look at Adolfo's PR, here. So the idea is that CIPMM should be able to run within the context of our release process using Krell, which is going to further prevent the manualness of it all. If I understand correctly, it will do the CIPMM shenanigans and then also produce a PR at the end of it. Did I get that right? Okay. So I think there are a few fixes, and Sasha has already done some initial review here. One thing I wanted to discuss before we move forward with this one is understanding context, right? So the context of the change, we have to consider, I think that there are lots of different things that the Krell toolbox does. So for people who are not familiar, CREL stands for Kubernetes Release Toolbox, right? So there are lots of things that the release toolbox does at this point. You know, it handles some of the changelog stuff. It does the GCP manager stuff. It's starting to do more and more. I think that it's very important that we make sure that the names for the commands that we choose are properly scoped, as well as if they need to be sub commands, that's something to consider as well. So for CREL promote, I don't know what it's promoting. So I would say it's doing release image promote or something, right? So just to provide context, because eventually we're going to be looking at doing GCS promotion, right? Artifact promotion that are within the various GCS buckets, right? So we have to talk about how to do that, but we also will need a promotion command for that, right? So I want to make sure that we don't collide in that namespace before certain commands exist. So I think that's my primary review point for this PR, but I think it looks awesome.
So maybe promote images or something like that.
Yep. Yep.
And well, the doubt I have about it is that when I first did the first trial runs of it, I saw those mock images being included in the manifest.
Right.
And so I wanted to know, where should we focus our efforts to fix that? So I was thinking in maybe 3 places. I could add some logic to CREL to skip those, which doesn't seem the best of things. I could maybe patch the CIPMM tool, or maybe deeper in the release process. I don't know.
So yeah, so some context on the mock images. Essentially, what we were trying to do is make sure that it's hacky. I'm going to be honest. It's a little hacky. I tossed that in so that we could still do some validation. So you've worked on the image kind of validation Scopio bit as well. It's meant so that we can do that validation on images in the mock phase, right? So essentially, as we're crossing the boundary between the images that are in staging and the ones that need to be promoted, we want to make sure that when we're doing official stages, we're promoting to the official place that they need to live, right? Or we're landing those images in the staging repository, right? Which then need to be promoted into real prod, right? But we need kind of an analog on the mock side, right? So the analog is having them in that /mock directory. So yeah, there are a few options. You could strip the mock images. I think what I would like to see is the CIPMM tool do more filtering. There's some refactors overall that I want to do on that tool. I want to make sure that it's kind of it's also Cobra based. There's some quirky things with the flags. I'm not sure if you've seen. So that may be a larger effort. I think maybe for the initial run, we can just strip the mock images from your tool.
Right from the YAML.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, and I take a look into the CIPMM image and the command and see if I can add the filtering capability myself.
Sounds good. Awesome.
All right. So this is still building, so no demo this time.
What's up?
So the CIP tool is still building in my machine, so I won't be able to demo the thing right now.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Any questions, comments, additional reviews on Adolfo's work?
Before we transition to the next thing, I have a quick question that's unrelated, Stephen.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so in the chat, we're talking here about the alpha release, and I was wondering, are we doing .1 tomorrow? Right now, well, we were talking about a number of things. Number one, should we do .1 tomorrow? And then number two, the cadence for the alpha releases on the schedule. They're not like in a uniform cadence, as in like there's different durations between each alpha release. and we were just wondering about the protocol for establishing those on the release calendar.
I just dropped a thread to discuss that in the SIG release channel, but those dates came from the original, like they were based on what was in the 119 schedule originally.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked in the PR if those dates were fine and didn't get any feedback. So we can tweak them now. I think let's just come up with what they should be so we can update the doc correctly.
Yeah, I don't have any explicit problems with them at all. I was just wanted to make sure that, number one, that we get the .1 release done, and then that we're comfortable with the other ones.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm not sure if the .1 is in the schedule. If that's what you just said, I'm sorry. I'm like going through the chat as well.
Yeah, it's not. I think
it hasn't been for the past releases either.
Yeah, because like the .1 would have been before we started. I think you mentioned that like way back at the beginning.
So the .1 is intended to be kind of like a post-release it's listed as a post-release activity for the previous release. So it's intended that it's usually happening before the schedule is even generated for the next release, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all that being said, should we do it tomorrow?
Yeah, we can do it whenever. So I had hoped to get a few more things in for that .1, including the Go 115.2 update.
Mm-hmm.
That stalled out on some Bazel things, which I think we're almost at the end of. But I would say go for it.
Yeah, the reason for doing it tomorrow would be that Alpha 2 is scheduled for next week. So if we want any diff there. We could also, just bump them all later.
We could just bump them. We could just bump it out to next week. I leave it to you all.
That sounds fine to me. I mean, I don't think we're like, if you have a few things that you would like to get in and that sort of thing, I think we could just bump them all one if people are cool with that. Feels kind of weird to have like less than 7 days between alpha releases. So
yeah. So that sounds like a task for release managers as well. If you want to take a look at where we currently have the various releases in the schedule and see if the cadence makes sense.
I can take a pass at that for sure.
And it sounds like Dan's super interested in doing that. So.
I don't know how interested I am. It just immediately affected me. So. I am interested though, so I'll take a look at that.
All right, thanks, Dan. Okay, we're at Anago. Sasha, do you want to talk about Anago a little bit?
Yeah, so we have two main topics about Anago, and the first one is the migration from Anago to Krell. And we drafted a little roadmap, which is linked there for transparency reasons. And we don't have a decision on that roadmap yet, but I created a bunch of issues, how to move forward on the current migration and which parts of Anago can be converted into Golang-based subcommands of something like Krell Anago, and then like we do it with the set release version, which is currently in place. So my proposal is that we move forward on that road and migrate further parts of Anago to Golang-based implementations, and later on, whatever later on means, we swap out Anago and move over to something like Krell stage and Krell release. And this should not clash with any plans on further improvements around additional features like release notes enhancements and stuff like that. What do you think about this?
Do you want to walk us through the tasks, like your open issues flow?
Oh yeah. Let me share my screen. So like this. So what I basically did is I just went to Anago and looked at the huge amount of bash we still have left in, and then I carved out some pieces of bash and put them into some logical conjunction. For example, if we look at the retrieving the build candidate is a fair amount of bash code. So in Anago, it's right around this one, and also some other functions like this fast forward check. And the main idea is now to build a Krell subcommand as part of Krell Anago, which actually does exactly the same logic. And for example, for that build version, I did it like this, that we can go to the subcommand. And it looks, it's that release version actually. I mix them up every time. Yeah, that we use the same inputs. So we need a build version, we need a branch, we need a parent branch, and then we generate a little piece, just a little piece of bash, which will be then just sourced by Anago. And that's it. And the only thing we actually do here is we call out to set release version up there. And later on, if we have Krell stage, for example, and Krell release, and it's just Krell stage, I think so, then we can remove this whole subcommand and only use those lines for setting the release version. So we don't do refactoring and converting from bash to Go in one step. So this is a two-step approach to, in the first place, implement something in bash, in Golang, which should replace some piece of bash. And later on, we refactor on top of that. So we already have tests in place then, and then we can safely switch over to something new. And that's the whole strategy. And the same applies to the other issues. For example, we have the same for updating the GitHub release, which is currently not, we have some GitHub API, but this API has to be extended to actually update the GitHub release for the Kubernetes release. And then we have Krell push, which is not in production used right now, but we have a fair amount of code which lays around in K-release. And the idea is to finish that up. I assigned myself that task, but there are still some open pieces left. And then we have the same, for example, for pushing the Git objects. I'm not sure if every issue is already assigned. Let me just double check. So this one, for example, for pushing the Git objects is not assigned yet. And the one for updating the GitHub release is assigned to Marco. And this one is for the build candidate. This is a little bit more complex, to be honest. It's not trivial. Also doing review on those tasks is not trivial at all. But if you feel happy to work on this, then yeah, I mostly label them with help wanted, and then you can just pick it up or contact me directly, and then I can guide you through the issue if you want. So is Tim on the call? Just stop sharing.
I'm here.
Yeah. So Tim had a proposal that we move on over from, or that we create something like a feature branch and currently start with with Krell stage and Krell release right now. We can do that in parallel if we keep in mind that we still have some open conversions left. But I'm not sure how long it will take until we get something actually working. Because testing would be mainly running it in GCP and trying to build a release, right?
What do people feel about the risk of doing mock stage and release? We should be able to do a number of those to experiment.
Yeah, so Tim, I think you had suggested feature branches. I like it as a potential option. However, I think that we're going to get more testing if it's closer to what's on our default branch. Um, the suggestion around having the Anago subcommands was so that we could essentially wash our hands of them when we're done, right? So similar to like a kubeadm alpha phase situation, right? Where if the new flow is kind of ensconced in these alpha commands or these Anago commands, that we can do a Krell Anago stage or something like that, right? That would eventually evolve into just a Krell stage, right? But it allows people within the same tool to test the new Anago flow while still being able to depend on the current flow using the Krell GCP manager commands.
My question is more around testing methodology. Whether that's on a feature branch or in the main branch, are we comfortable with running it for mock stage and mock release? Like, could any of us run that 5 times today and it would be okay in GCB in the project?
I mean, it should be, right? So it should be okay.
Yeah, should be fine.
Yeah, in that case, then I don't see any reason to, like, previously you'd really advocated, Stephen, that we move things off onto a separate branch and enable separate CI and testability outside
That
of our
has not
production
been working.
bucket.
That has not worked. As long as it's not going to production, I think it's fine. So the first part of the flow we can absolutely test. I think, it gets harder when we flip on the official flag, right, or the no mock flag, because there are restrictions about where we can place artifacts. So the Kubernetes release test, the GCP project has access to write into the Kubernetes release buckets. However, the GCP project that we should be using, the Kubernetes staging Kubernetes project, does not have access to write into either of those buckets. And the reason for that is that those are Google-owned projects, right? The old buckets are Google-owned projects. So, as a wider effort, we need to, I think, this cycle is a good time to start talking about what the GCS promotion situation looks like, because we've essentially it's essentially been solved for container images, but not for GCS artifacts.
So ahead of that, if we agree as a goal to try to get a optional path, I don't want to say feature branch, let's call it a alpha level feature into a testable state, we could do a fair amount of testing over the coming months in the mock path. And then if we're ready in January-ish, we could try doing some actual alpha releases from it. We'd have the two of them. We could make an alpha one with the one tool, alpha two with the other tool, do a little bit of back and forth A/B testing at the alpha point. If we're not ready, we'd, depending on the cadence, 3 to 5 months later, we'd have the next opportunity to do some alpha builds. If we're comfortable with the alpha builds being a less consequential place, that might be our path to get that production level test if we haven't solved all the other problems we have in between here and there too.
Yeah, sounds reasonable. So Sasha, a few things on, do you mind popping up your sheet one more time?
Yeah, like this.
Cool.
1 second. This one.
So a few things I wanted to mention here. I think there's a PR open for the retrieving build candidate. I think there was a name change to one of the functions or the subcommand name. That actually made it more confusing for me. I think it's the set release version one.
What do you mean? I mean, yes.
One of the PRs you opened recently.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now I can remember.
Set release version, I think, is the. Yeah, if that and to next version, right? So I think this would maybe be better as generate release version. So it's clear what. So we're not setting a next version there. We're generating the version for the current release. So that's one note there. And then for the push commands, I know that you're staring at it. I know that Dan was staring at the push commands in the past. We need to be very, very careful with the CREL push because CREL push is responsible for pushing all builds, not just so the CI builds as well. So if we write a tool, the tool needs to be usable in CI. So you have to consider all the paths that it might take. So does it need to live in the Bootstrap image? Does it need to live in the Kubekins EDE image? So on and so forth, right? It's easy now because it's Bash, but we'd have to do more for it to be supported as Go.
Yeah, okay. All right, so do we want to add something to this whole plan that we want to, for example, my proposal would be now we start in parallel with something like CREL stage and test it directly in GCP. And yeah, in any case, we would need those functionalities down here, like something like updating the GitHub release would be needed in any case. So
right. Whatever we name it, let's make it very clear that let's make it hard to do wrong. So let's make it very clear that this is a pre-release command or an alpha-ish command. So if we need to name it CREL Anago Alpha or CREL Alpha Anago something, yada yada, make it hard to get to and make it hard to be used, a little harder to be used in the official flow for now.
Would it be a point maybe to introduce a broader feature flag in the CREL command line tool? A -- alpha or a -- zomg, be careful.
yeah. I mean, we can do that. I think everything. I think if we were to ensconce everything in a subcommand, that would do it. But yeah, we could look at doing enable features or some feature flag name.
The subcommand is what the Google Cloud G-Cloud thing does, isn't it? It's like G-Cloud
G-Cloud beta, G-Cloud alpha. Yeah. So that's kind of why I was thinking along that route, because one of the tools that we use do that already.
okay, sounds good.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns on all of that? Okay. All right, so let's jump to Marco. Tell us a little bit about the role definition work that you've been doing.
Yeah, so as announced at our last release engineering meeting 2 weeks ago, I have started looking into some role definition work around the release manager associate and trying to get a more detailed definition and some set of documented responsibilities of associates. And so far, I can say that we probably don't have a lot of updates and progress so far, but I had been in contact with Lori and with team. I have collected some feedback. One of the first thing is that by the end of the next week or in 2 weeks, we are going to have a meeting. I am going to send out a doodle today. Dan is going to hold a meeting, and he is going to do some release manager associate intro, and we are going to have a time for some Q&A sessions. So you as an associate can come, and you should probably come if you are able. We are planning to record the session, but anyways, it is probably a great time that you ask any questions that you have, and we will try to come up with answers. And as I said, I'm going to set that after the meeting. And besides that, I am looking to try to come up with some document to try to collect some of the tasks that we have been doing recently and collect some relevant PRs, descriptions. Is there any documentation? What are permissions needed? I am going to try to work on this week. I can't promise that I might be able to accomplish a lot this week because I have some exam on Friday and I'm a little bit busy, but once I'm done with that one, I should have more time to look into all of this. Also, there is something left by Lori. Lori, do you want to say a few words about this?
Sure. So I just put the link in the agenda and also shared it, I think, on the channel. Yeah, I did this morning. Sorry, there's a lot going on. But basically, how do we get team spirit in this group? Like, how do we have a teamy feeling where we know that we all are driving the agenda together as a group? So to do this requires all of us to kind of just be mindful of how these meetings are run. So this might mean, you know, if we have an issue or a question or a need, we bring that to the meeting. And if we're concerned about how to do that, then we reach out for guidance to structure the question or the need or the proposal. And then when we're trying to communicate with each other, like, do we use DMs? Do we push things to the channel to get more eyes on our questions so that everyone else can benefit from the conversation? So the idea here is to see if we can just draft a very, very lightweight ways of working agreement that spells all of this out so that it's creating a kind of a uniform culture for this group and how we like to communicate, how we like to structure the meetings, how we like to make sure that the meetings cover the right topics from everyone. So those things. And we can do this asynchronously. It might be easier to do in person. It usually is because you get a lot more data, but I understand that people's schedules are quite busy. We can also try to earmark some time in this meeting to create it. Does anybody think this is a stupid idea? Like, I always work with what is bad or wrong and then knock out what would block us from doing something. So
There are no stupid ideas.
yeah, but does it sound, what would you prefer? Does anybody have any thoughts about async versus doing it inside this meeting?
No, I don't think this is stupid either. And actually, I think it's really good because I think I can tell you about my experience, and we talked a little bit. And I'm actually super thrilled that now I have like friends with me in the release associates. Because it was very hard for me, like for personal reasons, but also like in general, to know what to do, you know, because and not even technically speaking, like just what to grab and like
Okay.
what was I able to grab on, or you know, there were so many things happening at the same time, and like on my side I was super busy with other things that it was super hard for me to just come and adopt an issue. So that would have been great, like to have like a list where I could just, I mean, I know I'm being a brat right now, but in my head, like Disneyland or my ideal thing would have been like to come and or like go to some place and have a list of things to be done. And like in my, I don't know, I usually have a lot of time, spare time, but like in that spare time, just work on it. And instead of that, it usually required a lot of triaging and all that, which I am not saying that it should be like black or white or very binary. Of course, you have to talk to people and stuff like that. But I think that that was the main issue that we talked about in other meetings.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, at some point I was officially like the only kid I made with Marco, but he did an amazing job. But yeah, we didn't have like a structured program for.
Okay, so we're gonna not look backwards. We're gonna look forward.
No, yeah,
and we're
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
think
No,
about how.
what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
But I
Right.
think we just need to focus on what we do next. So
Yeah, no. What I'm saying is that your idea is great, and
okay,
for
cool.
everyone.
Yeah. So what we need all of you to define what that idea looks like, and the idea here is to actually make us effective and help us to actually get things done. That
Yeah.
is the purpose of the ways of working agreement.
So I think that with the number of people, it might, this is just my guess, it might be hard to coordinate all of the schedules every single time. So maybe like, obviously strive for that, but not making it the main priority. So maybe having in mind, keeping in mind that someone at least once will be async.
Yeah,
So
that's a good
like
point.
having that like as a priority. That this is my point of view. Of course, I'm open to others.
Sure. So, I mean, maybe we can just talk offline. Two choices. I think we do it in this meeting or we do it async. And I think always with all these efforts, with any effort, you're going to have some people who are going to be more engaged than others.
Yeah.
So if you really want to get involved in defining how this group works, go and put a note in the Slack channel. That would be my suggestion. And then you will be called upon to not necessarily do more work, but you know, to invest in the outcome, making sure there's an outcome,
right.
And participating, which is basically providing your feedback.
Yeah.
So yeah, anybody here who's willing to do that, please raise your hand now. And then the result would be open for review. So everyone here can get a chance to look at it before it goes live. That's important.
I think that's one of the key notions to splitting things out, and in general, just having effective meetings. The more you can do asynchronous, the less you have that has to be in the synchronous meeting, but understanding that it's almost sort of a hierarchy. There's things where once you've established something within a set of people, if that was in a Slack DM, you bubble it out into the Slack channel and say, hey, we just had this idea. What do others think? Or you bubble it out into GitHub, and maybe the goal at GitHub isn't to get the PR merged, it's to get a discussion started. So there can be a trade-off in velocity, or maybe you slow down a little bit, but that brings in more people's voices and more people come to have some understanding of it. It may mean pausing on something for a day or two just to get to proactively pull a couple of other people's review or opinion or thoughts and build out the team. Yeah. So things might at times feel slightly slower, but then if a few people are like, well, maybe this is confusing, let's get some more people. Let's bring it to take 5 or 10 minutes on the agenda.
Sorry, we're out of time.
Oh, we are, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't want to hold people up. So we'll we can work out all of these details in the doc, and it should be very short, by the way, like 1 page. But this thought process helps us arrive at brevity. So sorry.
Cool. So sorry for the overrun, folks. I know there are 1 or 2 things that we did not get to chat about, but
get to the next meeting.
They look like things that we can also discuss in the SIG release meeting. So till the next one, thank you everyone for joining. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.